talk about tools for your toolbox. My toolbox is this metaphorical thing that I have strategies in place, and when I encounter a behavior or a situation or an encounter, then I find a way to look at my toolbox and come up with solutions. And the first one is life success attributes. Now, do you remember that roadmap I was telling you about? This is that roadmap. And I'm going to spend a good portion of this workshop working through for you what life success attributes is. You find hidden strengths. You find things that your kids really have beautifully talents in that they don't realize or see. You draw out those gifts and those strengths. You develop a sense of response ability. Now, it's not a typo. I turned one word into two. Learn to fail forward with confidence, structure environments for success, and create a positive culture of support and accountability. And I'm going to spend the rest of the next hour that we have together working through these objectives. Any questions so far? All right. This is a good time to just take a quick break. Everybody stand up. I'm gonna do a little metaphoric exercise with you. All right. I want you to face each other. Turn face each other so that you can see other people in the room. And I want you to follow my instructions exactly. I want you to follow my instructions exactly. Okay? I want you to take your hands and I want you to raise them above your head as high as you can and leave them there. All right? Now, watch each other because here comes the magic. Now I want you to go a little higher. All right. Go ahead and drop your hands and shake them out. What happened there? You did not follow my original instructions, did you? What did I say? I wanted from you. Raise your hands as high as you can. And not one of you followed my instructions. What happened?
Everybody went higher.
You know what that's called? This is 100%. This is 110%. All right, you gave me that extra little oomph. All right, go ahead and shake them out. All right, do a big old neck roll. All right, shoulder shrug. You know, we're going to be here for another hour. I'll try and get you up one more time and moving. Go ahead and have a seat. All right, so that roadmap I was talking about, the life success attributes. We found this research out of the Frosting Center, and it was like, because it's so tailored what we were doing at SOAR, and it's so affirmed the things that we were doing. And it also backed up a study that had been done in Stanford years prior. And it was a longitudinal study that looked at what are the things that make an adult with a learning disability successful. What things did they possess in high school? Because it started with the premise. If IQ and academic achievement and, let's face it, socioeconomic status, if those are the three things that in the normal population are going to spell out for you success, you know, a higher level of success in adulthood, do those three factors transfer if you've got a learning disability or ADHD? And guess what? Do you think they do? They don't. And so they found 6 different life success attributes that were a better predictor. And so interestingly, there had been a study done in Stanford in 1987 that looked at a different question. What were the common themes of adults with learning disabilities that had found success in life? And so many of the success attributes that the Frosting Center discovered were with that Stanford study. And so what are they? Well, they're self-awareness, being able to be proactive, the ability to persevere, the ability to set goals, having good support systems, and the ability to emotionally cope and regulate your emotions. All right, so here we go. And I know you're going to say, well, John, that's important for everybody. Well, that's true, it is. But for kids diagnosed with learning disabilities and ADHD, it's even more critically important. So we're going to focus, I would encourage you to think about focusing your efforts, your parenting efforts, to really kind of support these areas. And I'm going to talk through some strategies by which you could do that. All right, self-awareness, what is that? Now, it's the ability to know your strengths and your weaknesses. What word came first there? Strengths. Understand academic gifts and challenges, is aware of their talents and abilities, is aware of their feelings, options, and values. They understand and accept their learning disability, and they are able to compartmentalize, okay, I may have a learning disability here, but I've got abilities in other areas. Helping kids become self-aware. Now, I've mentioned earlier that I'm really, really interested in helping kids understand and develop some of their hidden strengths. And so I want to tell you a little bit about those. This idea came out of a college assignment I had years ago where somebody once told me, you know, John, sometimes our greatest challenges inversely have our greatest strengths attached to them. So think about that. Stubborn, being stubborn, is that really a talent? Is there really a hidden gift there? Well, you bet there is. You know, as painful as it is when your kids are stubborn, there's this strength, there's this tenacity, this tenacious life force that exists in them that is so powerful. You know, life is not easy for my children growing up. They have to work harder. My son, his homework, instead of being, 20 minutes, is sometimes, 3 hours. It's not easy. But it's that stubborn nature, it's that tenacity to just keep plugging away. There's another wonderful word for that I'm hearing come back around that I just love. It's called grit. I'm going to tell you a quick story about my son. He highly emotional, and sometimes he really gets down on himself. And one day, my wife called me, and she said, John, I need you to get home as fast as you can. I said, what's going on? Well, I just talked to Jay, and he says he wants to die. That's a really serious thing, and I know I've got an impulsive son, and he's having those kinds of feelings. I race home, and my son's reality wasn't that he wanted to die. My son's reality was today really sucked, and it sucked to be him that day, and he wished he wasn't himself. He wished he didn't have to live in the body that had the day that he just had. But that's a complicated sort of thing to discuss. So rather than address the issue head on, I chose to take a different tact. I teach at SOAR, I teach primitive skills. It's one of the things that I'm passionate about. And so I said, come outside with me for a second. And I showed him how to make a tinder bundle out of raw bark. And then I gave him some flint and steel. And I just, and with 2 strokes, I had a nice little fire going. And I said, I want you to try this. Now, I made that look really easy. I've done them probably 1,000 times. I knew he was going to struggle to make that happen. And so he starts. And he's working on it. And he's doing all the things that I taught him, and he's still just struggling. And so then I said to him, by the way, you cannot come back inside until you have started a fire. And so he's working on it, and working on it, and working on it. I go into the kitchen, I start cleaning up the kitchen a little bit, I'm right outside the door, and after about 30 minutes, I hear him crying and weeping, and this sucks, and and I go out there, and he's like, Dad, my fingers hurt, can I just come in? I'm like, no, buddy. That fire's your ticket to get back inside. So it took him 45 minutes. A little more instruction, a little more tweaking, and then finally, boom, one of those sparks hit. Woof, he had a little fire, and he looked at it. He was like Tom Hanks, I have made fire! And he looks at it, and he's got this look on his face, and I said, how does that feel, Jay? And he said, it feels like Christmas. And I said, and why does it feel so good? He said, because I had to work really hard on it. It took me forever. So I whispered into his ear, son, you know what that's called? That's called grit. Now the thing about grit is that you've got to be stubborn to take on life's challenges. You have to find a way to push past the difficulty. And the beautiful thing that happens when you push and you push and you push, and then you get the light at the end of the tunnel, and you get the opportunity and you have the success, is it feels like you've earned it. And when you feel like you earned it, it's yours. It's why outdoor adventure is such a great medium for these kids, because it takes them out of their comfort zone. And you've got a backpack on. The backpack is heavy, and the shoulder straps, they hurt your shoulders. But you've got to keep going because there's not a helicopter coming to get you off the backpacking trail. The trailhead is 7, 10, 12 miles that way, and your exit point is another 7, 12, 18 miles that way. You've got to keep going. And as much as every step on that backpacking trip just sometimes is I hate this, the feeling of accomplishment that kids feel once they've accomplished that journey is extraordinary, because they were able to push through and be tenacious. Distractible. Yes, I am distractible. But with that distractibility comes this multitaskable sense. I'm really good at doing a lot of different things at the same time. I can be in my office working on the budget at SOAR, coming up with tweaking the final components of this presentation. The phone rings, I'm on the phone, and somebody walks into my office and they need a question to an answer. And I can give them that answer and then kind of go back to what I was doing, working all three things at once. Those very same people that'll walk into my office, if I were to disturb them while they were working on something, can you imagine the look I would get? Can't you see I'm doing something? It's a wonderful gift that we have. Where's the real challenge for us? Even though we're multitaskable, where's the real challenge? Anybody? Getting something done. I'm also playing with this thing called but first disease. All right? So my wife says we change the light bulb in the bathroom. You bet I could do that. So I go to get the light bulb, and on the way to the light bulb, I see my sunglasses. And I'm like, God, I've been looking for those. I need to get those in the car. So I go to the garage on the way to the car to put the glasses in the car, and I see, every time I walk this tool bench, I can't get anything done because it's a mess. So I start cleaning up the tool bench. All right? Now I'm halfway into the tool bench, and there's this half unfinished project, and so I'm like, I'm going to finish this project. I walk back into the house really proud of myself because I finished something, and my wife says, did you change the light bulb? No! Yeah. So, external little locus of control, ways, little reminders, things that keep us on track, on task. Perseveration. Perseveration is, I call it sticky thinking. You just get stuck in a loop. And I'm going to tell you a really fun story. All right? So, we've got a kid on a raft on the Ocoee. I don't know if you've ever, the Ocoee is a class 3-4 river. And it's really quite a beautiful river in Tennessee. And imagine, if you will, if there's this gorge and the river drops significantly. And you tell classes of river because of the amount of water that flows through and the gradient drop that they have. And at the top of the Ocoee is a lake. And the water goes into this wooden flume. And it travels, and it really only loses about 6 inches of grade to the power plant, and then it comes rushing down into the power plant, and it turns 2 or 3 turbines. All right, and it's the only active wooden flume in the country right now. And so this kid is fascinated by the turbines and the whole hydroelectricity and the flume. And so we contract with a company who is has professional guides take us down the river, and this is what this young man is doing. All right, we're about to travel through a rapid, and he turns to ask the instructor, the guide, what happens if one of the logs break in the flume? And she screams, paddle, paddle. How many turbines are on right now? And she screams, paddle, paddle. Then he turns and he says, is there a train track that goes on top of that? Is that how they get to repair the thing? She says, paddle, paddle. How many gallons of water, does it go through? And that's all he can think about. I mean, he is absolutely stuck on that thing. So finally, we go over a particularly big drop, and now we're in a bigger calm pool of water, and he turns to ask her a question, and she grabs a hold of his life jacket and bloop, throws her into the water. All right? He falls in the water, and he comes up and says, "Are the turbines on now?" Sticky thinking. Another young man named Colin, who I am still in touch with today, did some really remarkable work with us, but he got stuck. When he realized that I also really enjoyed knots and how to tie knots, he wouldn't leave me alone. Colin would eventually, it was on 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, he unzips my tent. He shines his flashlight on my eyes and he says, "Look at this new knot I invented." And I'm like, "Colin, go build me a hammock." He was there all summer. He collected all the extra string that all the other kids brought to camp. And by the end of the summer, he presents me with this little hammock. All right, sticky thinking. You know, Colin went on to become an absolutely remarkable potter, doing geodesic shapes that he would actually have to do the math for first. He had to create a brand new kind of slit to keep things together because other potters would have their pots crack. But he was so focused. He can't sell his work. He can't. The number of hours that it takes Colin to make the art that he has, there's no way that he can be compensated for it. But he does remarkable things. The world is changed by people who are willing to look at the world differently. And that perseveration ends up being an incredibly opportune way for kids to be focused and choose a path and really, really define excellence. We talked about being oversensitive. I had little Jimmy at camp, and he was very homesick. I knew he was homesick because I got a call from his parents that said, is my son homesick? I said, he is. In fact, I was going to call you. How do you know? They said, well, at the laundromat, he slipped a note to some strangers that said, "Help me, I'm being held against my will, call my parents." All right, how do you fix that level of homesickness, right? Well, you know what? I do not have the ability to fix that. Again, I can't make you not homesick. I can tell you that there are great, remarkable things about being homesick. That having to work through that anxiety and that stress can be a remarkable opportunity for growth. And it has to happen for kids. There's a wonderful book called Homesick and Happy. All right? But for this young man, the thing that was the magical trigger was I had another kid come up and say, "Hey, Big John, I noticed that he's really homesick. Is it okay with you if I talk to him?" I said, "That'd be great." And he put his arm on the kid, and I could see the two of them kind of this, sobbing and talking. And that was it. He had a friend. Our kids are so wonderfully and magically sensitive and intuitive. It gets them into trouble. It can be a really, it's a gift and a curse. But the gift of many of our kids is there's this innate sweetness and this beautiful spirit about them that is remarkable. They know what it's like to struggle. They know what it's like to suffer. They know what it's like to get through things. And even though they can be incredibly oversensitive, there's this tremendous intuitive nature there that I love. And what if I were to tell you that one of my greatest gifts is my ability to procrastinate? And I would say to you that some of you have experienced some of the same sort of gifts of procrastination that I have experienced. Because what Stephen Covey in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, what he calls this, for me, is an urgency addiction. All right, when the deadline looms, all of a sudden my thinking becomes clear, the fog goes away, and what I can accomplish is really quite extraordinary. But if it's so far in the future that it has no real relevance for me, I really struggle to kind of wade through that unless I create deadlines. And that's the key here, deadlines. And the deadlines that are going to create that urgency, can they be like deadlines on a piece of paper, or do they need big fangs and teeth? They need to have teeth. Deadlines with teeth create that arousal that clears the thinking, that allows us to get things accomplished. How many of you were putting the final touches on a major term paper the night before, doing an all-nighter, getting it done? Yeah, all of you. Because that's when it's real, because that's when the pressure's on, and very often the kids that we work with, high pressure, can create a really interesting opportunity. Going back to one of the other strengths I have, distractibility and doing well under pressure are two things that make our kids particularly adept at a job that we discovered because some research was done. There was a particular profession out there where had a high suicide rate, and so they were doing some research as to why, and they found that there was a subset of this profession that the suicide rate for them was lower than the average mean of suicides in the regular population. But if you take them out of the mix, the suicide rate for the rest of the profession was much higher than the median for the average person. Do you know what that job was? Anybody? Air traffic controllers. So why would our kids make particularly good air traffic controllers? The pressure's real, lots of different things to jumble and make sure they're in the right place. You know, there's the being distracted. There's nothing to distract you. The distraction is your job. And then when it's time to go, you just move on. You're able to do other things. The idea of being able to kind of live in the moment is something that our kids can be very spectacular with. There's this wonderful cartoon. Do you have an idea for your story yet? No, I'm waiting for inspiration. You can't just turn creativity on like a faucet. You have to be in the right mood. What mood is that? Last minute panic. Hidden strengths. Are we disorganized? Yes. But we often find that with that comes a flexibility. How many folks that are disorganized have you asked, or you know that one of their great strengths is that they can shift and move on a dime, that they can problem solve, that they can find workarounds, because their life is chaos, and so they tend to have a real flexibility in their thinking. Are we daydreamers or are we creative? Yes, we are. Rigid versus structured. And then the final one I have here is, how many of the kids that you're raising or working with are manipulative? Okay, just only a couple? All right.
Can I raise both hands?
Okay. All right. Would you define manipulation for me?
Oh. The ability to work a situation in your favor?
To get what you want? Yeah? Those are seeds for something else. Leadership. The challenge is that manipulation is very often selfish and self-indulgent. And while leadership has a more altruistic, but those seeds are there. Those opportunities are there. So ultimately, what do you have? You want to be raising, and again, this is just a mindset I'm asking you to consider. Do you want to raise stubborn, distractible, perseverating, sensitive, procrastinating, disorganized, daydreaming, rigid little manipulators? Or do you want to raise tenacious, multitaskable, ultra-focused, intuitive, deadline-dependent, flexible, creative, structured leaders? So when it's difficult to figure out where my kids' strengths are, you've got to look a little deeper. You've got to peel back the onion. You've got to look at some of the layers, because these things exist. All of these are real.